Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. When Bennett Barrow's daughter was just a year old, she started showing some uncommon symptoms. Her teeth would fall out, her bones would break. It would take the family 10 years to find a diagnosis of hypophosphatasia. But finding an answer was just the beginning. With his daughter leading the way, the Barrows created an app that brings together people from around the world with rare diseases. Please welcome Bennett Barrow. Bennett, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Pat. My name is Bennett Barrow, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of RareGuru. It's an app that tries to connect the rare disease community, whether that's a patient or a caregiver or a special section with our teenagers to safely connect. We launched that last summer, and it's on the Android and Apple Store. And I'm actually in the financial services business, but our 10-year health journey led us to a diagnosis of a rare metabolic bone disorder called hypophosphatasia. My wife was diagnosed last June, I believe, late June. So June, I guess it was June 2019, actually. And then it was a heterozygous mutation, like a lot of these genetic rare diseases. And my 13-year-old daughter at the time, she was diagnosed 8 weeks later with hypophosphatasia as well. So half of the family right now is living with this bone disorder, and they're on the, I'd say, lighter end of the spectrum as the pendulum kind of swings from severe to light. But we're being monitored every 6 months by great doctors at Vanderbilt right now.
But it took you you went through this for 10 years looking for an answer?
We did. Well, it first started in 2009 with our second child, my son Hill. He just turned 12, actually 2 days ago. But at 24 weeks, my wife's water broke when she was pregnant with Hill. And so we went into the hospital, and they thought that she'd deliver within 24, 48 hours. Got a steroid shot to develop his lungs. And once you know it, we were there for 8 weeks. She was on complete hospital bed rest, couldn't get out of bed. So during that time, we learned a lot about the medical community, seeing the OBs every day, and wonderful doctors, very caring. But even day to day, they'd have different opinions. So we would actually have to get on chat boards or Google just to maybe sort some things out ourselves, especially my wife with her maternal instinct, saying maybe the opposite of what they're saying. So when you have two or three doctors and 4 or 5 nurses come in a day for 8 or 9 weeks, you kind of learn certain medical professions and how they come to decisions, which is good and bad. But it was great that we were in Tampa with good care. And then afterwards, my son was born healthy. He was in the NICU just for a few weeks, getting his feeding and some breathing down. And we launched a nonprofit after that. My wife did, where she actually brings bed rest basket items and NICU items to we started over 10,000 women in Tampa Bay. So a lot of feedback on people's hospital journeys that helped us in we think a separate journey to the rare disease diagnosis, and also to launch the RareGuru app.
What are some of the key lessons to come out of dealing with the vagaries of the medical community?
I always tell my wife, and she still says it today, when your gut and your instinct is telling you something's wrong, particularly women, I think your instincts are much better than the males, then you need to get a second and third opinion. And that can be the rare disease space or even something else, because a lot of it's by the book, and doctors can think about liability and really you need that second opinion because someone could be looking at an issue through a different perspective or lens. And it's out there, but I think a lot of people stop at that first opinion. So that's my biggest advice from where we were and where we are now, with my children healthy and happy, and also my wife getting great treatment along with my daughter.
I think that's a common theme across so many medical maladies, that you have to advocate for yourself and you have to keep pushing for information. And it's no one's fault. Everyone's doing the best they can. But particularly when you're dealing with something that's rather rare, there may not be a set prescription for what you need.
Yeah, and that's actually case in point. Even a standard blood test. So after my wife's high-risk pregnancy, not long thereafter, she had a thyroid tumor, so had a thyroidectomy. And then ever since then, she's been doing her quarterly blood draws. And every single one would show up that she was low on alkaline phosphatase, which is basically, in layman's terms, it shows how much the body can mineralize calcium. So if it's very low, then it should be an issue. The calcium's, is not going to the bones and where it should. And even LabCorp and Quest on every single one, and just dozens of these blood results said, please retest. This isn't, this reading's not making any sense. And every doctor, all the specialists would say, even second opinion specialists would say, nope, it's the high number you need to worry about, not the low. And my wife was just thinking, she's a CPA. She's just, it doesn't make any sense that I'm the only person with this reading. It's just, and it wasn't a mistake, obviously, because she's getting it quarterly. And that was, finally, low alk phos is the number one signal of this rare metabolic bone disease.
Wow.
Yeah. So she almost self-diagnosed herself in the summer of 2019, after my father got diagnosed with Waldenstrom's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So my wife did kind of self-diagnose herself via Google. She kind of put the pieces together. And it took a lot of searching, a lot of misinformation, but after she kind of had an inkling of what it was, faxed blood results to Mayo, and then we kind of got diagnosed there. But it was pretty clear that these blood results with a specialist, something should have popped on the radar. But if there's only 40 or 50 cases of hypophosphatasia in the entire state of Florida, they just haven't seen numbers like that or in other patients. So it's not, a lot of times it's not, they did try to look into it. They were just on a different path. So being rare it's tough for everybody, patient and even the medical doctors and community.
Oh, it's really hard. I was diagnosed with a really rare lymphoma back in 2009, and the local pathologist gave one diagnosis. I went down to Stanford for a clinical trial, and they indicated that I had been misdiagnosed.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would guess it's not uncommon. And in many ways, it really isn't anyone's fault. If you think that there are 60 subtypes of lymphoma or whatever, I mean, how many local doctors have seen any of these rarer conditions?
That's right. Yeah.
So what happened with your daughter? She was the one, it was your daughter that really brought this to your attention, wasn't it, with the troubles she was having?
Yeah. So we found out, it starts on the mild cases. It can start with more of the joints, fingers, and stuff that can break easy. So I think she was, and also teeth. That's because a lot of the fortified calcium is in the teeth. And then when your bones don't have enough calcium because it's not mineralizing properly, then that calcium kind of drains from the teeth and gets weaker and floats around the system. The body wants it to go to the bones, but it's not going there. So it's one of the first indications of the disease. But of course, a dentist isn't going to know that a few teeth that fall out is anything strange. But when she was 1 year old, perfectly healthy teeth, and I think she was chewing on the soft part of a comb, and her tooth just fell out, which is very strange. Another time, I think she's broken a finger a few times, but I think one was picking up a tennis racket or maybe a little fall and broke her finger. And that's a little strange for someone under the age of 10 or 5 or even 1 year old to lose teeth that easy or and again, this is some of these teeth had already come in and they're falling out. So that's pretty common. Again, you're with hypophosphatasia, there's so many different areas of the body that are affected, and you're seeing the specialist just in that area. So that was a little strange when my wife looked back at her records when she was a kid, or just remembering, since you can't really find records anymore, that she had similar issues that friends and family, or mostly friends, obviously had never heard of or didn't have. So Claire did kind of raise awareness to, some of the issues my wife had as a child as well.
Now, is this particular disease hereditary?
It is. Yep. And that's where she had, the heterozygous mutation. One of our kids had a 50-50 chance, and Claire already had those common symptoms that are associated with, we call it HPP, because the disease pronunciation is too difficult. But with HPP, that was part of it.
So how did RareGuru come to be?
Well, this is a great question. So my kids love this popular show called Shark Tank. Have you heard of Shark Tank? It's with, everyone knows it, but entrepreneurs go and pitch their business idea. So they were stuck watching that in the hot dog days of summer in Florida. And after my wife got diagnosed, my daughter is very protective, definitely saw how isolated she was. It wasn't like a high-risk pregnancy where, maybe a friend or, family member, or you're getting tied to someone in the community that's been through that experience. This was completely foreign, that she just didn't know anyone. Even at Mayo or Vanderbilt, she could have been in a room next to somebody, but they can't disclose that information, which rightfully so. Mm-hmm. So when she came home, I think my daughter saw kind of that isolation. And then when she got diagnosed, we allowed her on Facebook for the first time. She didn't have a phone, just to a closed forum that was in general about HPP. There's people in there with that are in wheelchairs and they're 7 years old, and they're talking about much more severe issues. And the first day, she was very, very distraught. It's a big group, and it's absolutely wonderful. And the information is absolutely correct. It's done so much. But for my 13-year-old, that was a lot the first day or two to get diagnosed. So that was probably a little mistake. I thought she should learn about it. And this was, Googling it wasn't going to be good either. And that was tough. So she had the idea, I don't think these big forums are going to work, especially with the disease that's, can be one end of the pendulum of the other, rather mild or severe. She said, "Hey, Dad, Mom, what do you think if we developed an app that directly connected patients, teens?" And I later thought about the caregiver aspect. And you can just connect with whoever you want to, privately and securely, instead of getting looped into one broad category. So that's kind of how we started. We got some referrals in California, hired a team in California to be our app developers. So it's been quite a journey.
Have you had, how's the app been received?
It's been great. We were targeting at the end of December last year, because we kind of have the 1.1 feature, if you will. It's kind of like a business. You got to continually evolve the ideas and what your users want. So we're really getting good feedback. We wanted around 1,000 users by the end of last year, probably around 5,000 now. And we're not really doing much marketing just because we want the new features to come out there. But and some great communities. There's a lot of cancer patients, lupus patients, some areas that aren't very large. They're finding each other. We have some in Australia, New Zealand, a nice little group of folks in England. So it's I think it was beneficial also, coincidentally, during the pandemic, because we launched before. But I think it has helped people connect because they couldn't meet up for an annual conference or fly to a center of excellence to be with each other.
Is the app free?
It is a free app, absolutely. Yes.
Any premium services being planned?
Not right now. We're right now we are trying to build because I guess the nexus of how it works is when you onboard and you can select a public or private profile because a lot of people are very rare and proud. They want everyone to come together, know who they are, but you can be completely private and private profile, which is obviously with security. We're very strict about that being a healthcare app, and so is Apple and Google. Frankly, to even get into the store, you have to abide by certain privacy laws. But you connect based on location, diagnosis, and symptoms. So our algorithm really goes with that primary diagnosis first. But we learned there's a lot of people that don't have a diagnosis, and they type in their symptoms, and they may match on symptoms. And we don't diagnose; we don't have any doctors on there. But patients can say, "Oh, hey, I connected with you. You got these 10 symptoms. So do I. You may want to look into this or that." So that actually,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think some people that were undiagnosed, from what we've heard, they've come up with a diagnosis just through the algorithm. More people are matching on. The more symptoms you have, the higher you're fed a connection request or profile to match with each other. So that's something we didn't see as part of the app initially. But again, there's no doctor diagnosing. But when you get let's say 10 people that you connected with that all have the same symptoms, you can get on the right path. So it's been valuable in that instance as well.
That's incredibly interesting, and very cool that it wasn't planned.
No, and it really came down to, well, first, how are we going to stream this information? And that was easy for our app development team. Okay, doing a location that's kind of broad by zip code because you can't use specific data. That's an easy one. They're like, well, I don't know about how we're going to match people with 7,000 rare diseases and initially 25,000 symptoms. How do we build this? So we actually kind of hired some people, CPAs, and we teamed up with GARD, the Genetic Rare Disease Information Center, and they've been very gracious. And so the data that you're seeing either on the website or on the app, when you enter that primary diagnosis or symptoms, that is streaming directly from the U.S. federal government rare disease database. And then we supplemented that with Orphanet, which is a European database. We saw some strengths that they had that maybe GARD did not, or vice versa. And also Malacard. So we kind of have a RareGuru database that's very comprehensive. I think it's the best of the best. And again, it's instantaneous and updated. And we're not doing the updating. This is coming from obviously a reputable player who's at the forefront of genetic information.
Do people interact via video or is it text? How do they connect?
Yes, so we have messaging, direct messaging. So when if you get a connection request or are scrolling with different matches and you send a connection request, then we kind of have an icebreaker, which is kind of, what's your favorite movie, or who's your favorite football team, or whatever it may be. And then you can directly message each other, and you can also include others that are in your connections, and you can group message. So that's been a very popular feature.
Wow. I think on Twitter, there's a group of people, there's a hashtag called Spoonie. I don't know if you've run into that. Okay. It usually refers to people who have a wide variety of symptoms. They may or may not be well diagnosed, but they're often finding themselves as a result isolated, homebound, very variable energy levels, things like that. And it's obviously a very difficult place to be, particularly if you haven't had a good diagnosis. And that community would benefit so enormously from an app like this.
No, that's wonderful information. Obviously, being the wealth management financial planner, I still consider my circle of competence in other areas. I'm quickly learning, but how many groups there are and how wonderful the rare disease, the advocacy is. It's just great to connect and talk. And I've not heard of them, but it sounds like a perfect fit with someone that could benefit. It's great.
Yeah, it's you might reach out just using the hashtag, and later I can give you maybe a few names and people to connect with as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So where does RareGuru go from here?
Well, our next feature that we're building, it tends to be a little more complicated than we thought. but we go back to our app developers and we listen to our users for us a little survey and what they want to see next. We are going to start streaming kind of a news spider, and that won't be like Google works. Google, you just Google, let's say a disease, and it pulls up just anything associated with that. So just billions of tiny areas that may be insufficient, or you don't want to see, or you're scrolling too much. So we're trying to get those 40, 50, 60 research organizations and maybe even the FDA, but streaming news to the inbox that's pertinent regarding your disease. So let's say you've onboarded with lupus and you opt in for the news, then we'll have those 50 organizations, the best of the best, that most recent and applicable to your journey, going to your inbox on a daily, weekly basis. That's kind of how we're designing it. We're not sure yet, but people do want a little more targeted news regarding their situation that they're going through.
Yeah, something like PubMed and even clinical trials could be interesting information too.
Yeah, and we're kind of taking that one step at a time. So we think the clinical trial information, that would be our next step after we kind of build a spider, just step by step. And again, version 1.1 to 1.2 to 1.3, but that is exactly our path.
No, I think that'd be incredibly helpful. Having gone through that route myself, any help you can get in identifying good information resources is invaluable. Absolutely.
And that was one path that you mentioned, the clinical trials, just meeting with certain communities that are going through it or have been through it. That's a very confusing area of trying to do the research on your own through search engines or even on social media. So that's a great area where maybe RareGuru could kind of stream, cut out a lot of the stuff that's unnecessary or doesn't pertain to that person's rare journey.
There's a service, or there used to be, I presume it's still alive, at the University of Pennsylvania called OncoLink. And they actually will assign a nurse to help you sort through some of the clinical trial information, which can be really valuable because she has an insight that she can bring a different perspective to your search. She or he.
That's great. Absolutely.
If you could rewrite your story, would you do it?
Well, you're asking a personal question. And as you know, we've got the family journey. So the family journey, I would not rewrite. It's even, and this is the words of my wife telling my daughter, we are going to do something wonderful with this diagnosis, and it's going to really shape who you are as a young woman going forward. And even this last year, because there were some scares with the pandemic, but seeing her going outside, being safe, but just enjoying and living life, something that's, the difficulties she's already had, and my wife, it's already benefited as far as the current challenges that, we as a society have faced this last 12 months or 16 months. So again, rewrite, they may have a different answer. But from my perspective, it's brought our family much closer and together.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life. You can subscribe to our free podcast at www.bumpintheroad.us or become a premium member to hear the full conversation. Just go to www.bumpintheroad.us for more information and to sign up.